What's that?
Mad Panic Gaming. Let's rock.
Hello everybody, Jim here. Welcome back for another video, and today we have a very special video indeed because we are doing a community question. So feel free to let your voice be heard down in the comments section. Today's question is, what is a long dead gaming franchise that you would love to see make a mighty return with a new entry? And something totally awesome today, first time on this channel, I got a bunch of my very best friends from around YouTube to join us today with some guest submissions. So they're going to tell us what some dead franchises are that they'd like to see make a comeback, and they gave us some awesome clips, and I'm really excited and happy for everyone to get to see that. So get ready to have your faces melted off by the pure awesomeness of my guests. And then come back at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you what are some dead gaming franchises that I'd personally like to see make a comeback. But with that being said, let's get started with today's guests, with the one, the only, the forger of pain himself, Karkamo.
And the battle begins. Fight!
What?
She's been kicking there.
Hinata? Tiffany? Do you mind? What makes a fighting game stand the test of time? It's a combination of memorable characters, engaging gameplay, and immersive storyline, all of which rival schools have set up the ass. What's up, my little Karkamaniacs out there? I am Karkamo, the forger of pain. I'm a pro wrestler that loves horror, anime, and video games. I'm also the South American Extreme Champion from Wrestling Alliance Revolution War Ecuador, and welcome back to Mad Panic Gaming. Today we're gonna see why this awesome franchise needs a comeback. This franchise is a team-based fighting games like X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Rival Schools has a diverse cast of characters, each with their own unique fighting style and abilities. Whether you prefer fast and agile fighters or the heavy hitters, there's a character for you. Game Story Mode is a thrilling journey through a conspiracy that threatens the safety of the students and the city. You know, like Harry Potter before the Harry Potter movies. The first time I gazed my eyes upon this game was on a friend's house and his brother called Franklin and Nigel Mac, playing then my pirated copy of Pocket Fighter. And inside it had the demo for Rival Schools. It was love at first playthrough. Before I became a serious collector, of course, back in the day all my games were pirated. Arr! But anyway, that's besides the point. I knew I needed this game in my life. So, what did I do? I got a Japanese copy for Rival Schools. Why, you may ask? I know this deserves further explanation. In Panama, where I come from, for the most part, we always got pirated Japanese games. And this was going on since the 80s. Ooh yeah, the good old NES days. It's not like I didn't want the English version, it's just that I never got one. So the game came with a second disc. Actually, this was the main feature, disc 1, where you create a custom character in a dating sim. Yes, you heard right. Depending on your choices, it affected the story and your character's moveset and special moves. Apart from that, it had some awesome mini-games that included mostly the sports team, ranging from baseball to football. Yes, for us Latinos, that's the name we call this. Football, not soccer. A year later, in 1999, we got another Japan-only exclusive for rival schools called, let me do my best not to butcher the title, Neketsu Sensung Nikki 2. It was an update with some new characters and extras, and more of that dating sim goodness. Rival School's graphics and art style hold up remarkably well, even by today's standards, especially its Dreamcast sequel named Project Justice.
Round 1, fight!
The game's action is fluid and engaging, with vibrant colors and impressive animations. Adding a third character to the team, more like a King of Fighters game. And of course, you can make a devastating 3-character super move that will keep you coming back for more beta. Capcom hasn't forgotten entirely about this saga, with Kyosuke being a playable character in SNK vs. Capcom 2. Batsu has proven to be the favorite. He's been a part of many games like Project X Zone, also being a playable character on the underrated Tatsunoko vs. Capcom for the Wii. Tiffany and Hinata making a cameo in the background of the beat stage for Street Fighter V. And speaking about Street Fighter V, Akira made it as a playable character in the last season of that game.
Akira wins.
Ooh, and I'm not done yet. The Mugen fan community certainly hasn't forgotten about the franchise, making 2D sprites for Batsu, Hinata, and Tiffany. If you're looking for a franchise that never gets old, then look no further than Rival Schools. With its unforgettable characters, gripping storylines, addictive gameplay, it's just as thrilling as today as it was back in 1997 until its 2001 Dreamcast sequel.
When I think of a game series that I want to see a revival of, well, there are just so many to be honest, which is kind of a shame. The Adventure and Legend of Valkyrie from Namco, Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, Tengai Makyo Faris Dividen, Ogre Battle / Tactics Ogre, Genso Suikoden. At least with the last two, there was a Tactics Ogre remake last year, and a Suiko 1 and 2 remaster in the works, both of which might lead to bigger, better things, fingers crossed. But out of all the great gaming properties surrounded by slow singing and flower bringing, it's Konami's Ganbare Goemon, aka the Mystical Ninja, that I want to see make a comeback more than anything else. While there are a few stinkers in the series, you know it's hard to hit it out of the park every time. Most of the games are a fantastic mix of clever, funny, memorable, and perhaps most important of all when it comes to video games, fun. And the biggest shame is that while Konami published and developed over 20 Goemon titles in the span of just as many years, only 4 got proper standalone releases in the West, including what is the worst game in the entire series, in my opinion anyway. Turning lemons into lemonade, this gives Konami a great opportunity to release all, or at least a majority, of the games in a compilation similar to what they've done with some of their other legendary titles, and to a large market that never got to experience them, though I imagine the time and monetary investment translating most of the games wouldn't appeal to the Konami board of directors. Thankfully, dedicated fans have done a lot of that work for them, and for free in the form of translation patches. And in a perfect world, Konami could work something out to apply these existing scripts with minimal scrub if they were to pursue such a project, but that rarely, if ever, happens. Regardless, I think the absolute best thing for this series would be a complete revival or continuation of Ganbare Goemon that keeps the spirit of the originals, and with the same characters and setting. Sorry futuristic reboots, you're out. A development team like Goodfeel, who has put out some quality retro-style games for Nintendo in recent years, would be ideal, not just because of their track record, but also because some of their staff actually worked on the Goemon games, with one in particular basically immortalized in the series as a main character. Seriously. In that way, if Goodfeel were to revive Goemon, it wouldn't just be a good fit, it would be a poetic one too. With classic and retro games more popular than they've ever been in the era of high-definition 3D graphics and gameplay, it might just be the perfect time to bring back Goemon and the gang to show everyone else just how close to perfection action platforming and adventure can get. At risk of sounding cliché, make Goemon great again, I say. Not sure if that'll happen, but a man can dream.
Special thanks to Jim for asking me to be a part of this video. One dead franchise that I would love to see make a comeback is If you couldn't tell, I am a really big Def Jam fan, specifically Fight for New York. It was actually my introduction to the franchise and one of my favorite GameCube games of all time. It's also one of the very few games that I actually have graded. I spent a lot of time as a child playing this, building my character, picking out my fighting style. There wasn't anything actually revolutionary about the game. It wasn't a Street Fighter, it wasn't a Tekken, it didn't even have the best graphics, but something about the game just felt like home to me. There wasn't anything really out at the time quite like it. You were fighting in the streets, but it was not Street Fighter. You got to play as some of the best rappers at the time, male and female, which also meant you got some of the best music in the game. It played a lot like GTA, where you would play the story mode, go on missions, and check a lot of your messages on your sidekick. I personally feel like there is still an audience for this, and if they announce something tomorrow, they would definitely make a profit. Like, even if they announced something as a Legacy Edition where you got to play as some of the OGs in the game and then gave the people DLC options for newer rappers they'd like to see. Personally, I feel like it would be awesome to see a game like Def Jam at EVO.
Hey there guys, Jared from Avalanche Reviews here, and I've been asked to say that I'm doing this of my own volition, and Kid Shoryuken is treating me very humanely. Alright, with that out of the way, getting down to business, there are a ton of game franchises that ended before their time. Series that still had some life left in them, but for whatever reason, weren't able to get that last release they deserved. And in that category, there is no better representative than Parasite Eve, a horror RPG made by Squaresoft back in a wonderful, beautiful, amazing era in gaming history. At the time, Sony's PS1 had already established itself as a powerhouse console, and Squaresoft had made a killing by deciding their next Final Fantasy game would grace its disk drive as opposed to being slotted into an N64. It was a short but glorious moment in time when Squaresoft was doing so well they could afford to experiment, which I think we can all agree led to some of the absolute best titles the company released to date. Speaking of which, Parasite Eve was a very odd amalgamation of elements that defied convention. The story was borrowed from a Japanese sci-fi novel of the same name, and its gameplay was something you couldn't necessarily nail down with a single genre. I mean, technically, it is an action RPG since you're able to run around and control Aya during battle, but then again, you are waiting for an active time bar to fill up before you can take any actions, which makes it one of the very few turn-based action RPGs I can think of, the only one coming to mind being Quest 64. And talk about a lineage to live up to. On top of that, it followed a general horror theme that reminded people back in its day of the Resident Evil series, leading to it getting labeled as a survival horror RPG, something I honestly never understood. I mean, I guess there are some similar elements here if you're squinting your eyes really hard, but realistically, PE plays out like any other RPG. You'll explore the world looking for items and upgraded gear and fighting enemies the same way you would in a Final Fantasy game. Honestly, if you ask me, the whole survival horror label thing probably came more from some similar visual aesthetics and not the gameplay itself, but I'm not exactly complaining. That's a pretty damn good point of comparison. Oh, and since we're on that subject, hot damn was this a gorgeous looking video game. It has these phenomenally detailed pre-rendered environments, and while the 3D elements might look a little wonky by today's standards, at the time it was mouth-watering. But if there was one single element this game is known for above all else, it would be its eye-melting CG cutscenes. In fact, gaming advertisements of the day referred to PE as the cinematic RPG thanks to its wealth of pre-rendered story scenes. It was actually pretty cool to be playing video games at the time. It was like you were witnessing the birth of a brand new genre, the cinematic RPG. After its success, Parasite Eve would see two follow-ups, the first one moving a little further from the whole RPG thing and cozying the hell up to those Resident Evil comparisons. After the second game, we would have to wait an entire 3 console generations before getting a PSP release of all things, but by then Squaresoft had lost the rights to the sci-fi novel its story was based on, leading to a game that included some familiar characters, but well, let's just say it didn't live up to the quality the franchise had been known for up to that point. And since then, it has been absolutely radio silent. It's honestly a very sad story, and that's because Squaresoft is likely never going to get the rights for a proper sequel back, effectively making this a dead series by default. But hey, at least we got one and arguably 2 great games out of the deal, so it's a little hard to get too upset. And with that, I've got to get back to the cage that Jim keeps me in, so I guess I'll talk to all of you, I don't know, the next time he lets me out. Peace out, guys.
Hey yo everybody, Dennis here. And since we're talking about dead franchises that need to come back, I could predictably say Mega Man Legends 3, but there's a series today that I'm gonna talk about that has a much deeper grave. My favorite racing games of all time, Midway's Rush.
It's dangerous!
This is an awesome trilogy of games, 2 of which are arcade games ported to home consoles. Both great games in their own right, however, I'm gonna highlight my personal favorite entry, what I find to be the most well-designed, content-rich game in the series. The one that was developed exclusively for the Nintendo 64. Rush 2, Extreme Racing, USA. There's 2 major elements that set Rush apart from other racing games. The first is the crazy, over-the-top, floaty physics, with your car soaring through the skies, flipping and dipping all around, before maybe going out in a blaze of glory. It's chaotic and fun as hell. The second element are the wonderful track designs. They knew, given the floaty physics and the insane sense of speed when your cars go over 150 miles per hour, that it's better to focus on the fun rather than realistic recreations of the cities. So you have all these wild platforms, loops, ramps, and tunnels, and roads that don't even make sense and don't need to. I said before, this game is loaded with content, and I wasn't kidding. There's an insane amount of secrets. For starters, a massive cheat menu with some of the craziest cheats you've ever seen. As for the core content, you have 16 cars from the start, and a bunch to unlock, and a dozen tracks to play on. Even Alcatraz and the Midway offices. And these tracks have keys and Mountain Dew cans all around that unlock more cars. The placement of these provide a lot of challenge, and you have to figure out just how in the world you're gonna project your car at just the right angle to get them. Which brings me to the stunt course, riddled with nonsensical objects for you, well, to do stunts, and try to get all the hard-to-reach collectibles. I remember countless weekends as a kid with friends staying the night, just taking turns playing the stunt course, while of course, drinking our Mountain Dew. Good times. So hopefully WB, who I believe now own the rights, will bring this series back in some form. A fantastic, long but forgotten series that deserves more love. If you've never played them, go pick them up, especially Rush 2 USA, because let me tell ya, it's a rush.
Where the hell are you going, McLean? I told you 9th Avenue is the quickest way south. Stop all the goddamn yelling, I know what I'm doing. Not even God knows what you're doing.
Oh my goodness, did I not tell you that your faces were going to be melted by the awesomeness of today's guests. I hope you're okay, by the way, and that the damage is not too extensive, but thanks to everyone who joined me today with their video submissions. I appreciate it. It's a really awesome game series they touched upon. Pretty much anything mentioned in today's video, I'd like to see a new game in that series, but now I'm going to tell you some of the game series I'd like to see make a comeback. I actually chose 4 because I'm the host of the video, so I get to do that. I get to have 4 choices. And to keep things kind of succinct, because honestly, there are about a million game series I'd like to see a new game for, but I want to stick with just fighting games for my choices, because as we all know, I'm a huge fighting game fanatic, especially some of the fighting games that came out in the mid and late 90s. And first of all, I will agree with my good buddy Carcamo. Rival Schools is a series I would really, really love to see make a comeback. I have been a big fan of Rival Schools ever since like 1998, I want to say, when I picked up the PlayStation game for like $10 from a Walmart, which was like just an absolute steal, because as soon as I got it home and played it, I'd never heard of it before that, but as soon as I started playing it, I was immediately like, wow, this game is amazing. I loved the graphics, I loved the characters and the story, all these like really cool like themed high school characters and like teachers and school nurses and everybody just beating the hell out of each other. The graphics were great, the characters were great, the story was cool, the soundtrack was outstanding, and with that Evolution disc you got some cool little mini games too. And then after that, in Japan only, Rival Schools 2 on the PlayStation was released, which had way more mini games and a couple of additional characters. And then we got Project Justice on the Dreamcast, which was also just fantastic, and you could have teams of 3 characters instead of just 2. Loved that game. I think that game came out in 2000, and then that was it. We never heard anything from Rival Schools ever again. I think some of the characters appeared in other games, like Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and I think like Namco Cross Capcom, stuff like that. But we never got a proper Rival Schools game since 2000. I think that's just an absolute crime. We need more Rival Schools. I need more Rival Schools anyway. So that's a series I want to see make a comeback. And sticking with Capcom, another great series they used to have back in the day that they haven't made a new installment since 1999, Star Gladiator. Where the hell is Star Gladiator? There was the original, and then there was Star Gladiator 2, also known as The Nightmare of Bilstein. 3D fighting games, heavily inspired by Star Wars. So the first time I played it, I was immediately like, that's a lightsaber, that's Chewbacca, that's Darth Vader. At the time, I was like, I don't know, 10, 11 years old, big Star Wars fan at the time. So immediately I was like, wow, a Capcom fighting game, heavily inspired by Star Wars. I immediately loved it. Again, just like Rival Schools, loved the visuals, I loved the characters and the story, the gameplay was outstanding, and the soundtrack was, again, phenomenal, really great stuff. The last game we got was Plasma Sword in 1999, and after that, again, maybe some of the characters appearing here and there. Hayato was in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Other than that, I can't think of anything these characters have ever even appeared in. Maybe they're afraid of getting sued. I don't know, by like Disney or Lucas or whoever. But this is a series that's awesome. I'd love to see make a comeback. That is the Star Gladiator series. Now, moving away from Capcom, another series that I used to absolutely love back in the day. The second installment was my favorite by far, but all the games are great. Bloody Roar. The Bloody Roar games were so damn cool. It was such a unique idea at the time. A big 3D fighting game, lots of cool characters, and you can pull off these big combos and aerial attacks and juggles and all kinds of stuff. And then you can transform into a beast form, and you can be a tiger or a wolf, or my personal favorite, Bakaru, the mole. He was my favorite at the time. It was like playing as Wolverine, like a big mole Wolverine doing his Berserker Barrage. But the Bloody Roar games have always been awesome. Great, again, great characters and visuals, gameplay outstanding, soundtracks really good. Always, always, always loved this series. The last game we got was, I think it was either Bloody Roar 4 or Bloody Roar Extreme, which was released in like 2003. And then after that, total like dead silence on this series. So we need another one of those. We need some Bloody Roar. I need it in my life. I need to transform into a mole and kick the ever-living crap out of somebody. So if they ever make another Bloody Roar game, that's gonna be like a day one buy for me. That's a series I miss greatly. And last but not least, an old series by Taito that I've loved for years on the PlayStation, on the Dreamcast, and I'd love to see another entry, Psychic Force. And if you've never played Psychic Force, it was a fighting game that was very unique in that you were flying through the air. You were these characters that had psychic powers, and instead of fighting on the ground, they'd fly up into the air. And then this like big three-dimensional cube is created, and you fly around within the boundaries of the cube. But you're launching ranged attacks at each other. All the characters had different elemental powers, so they had fire and lightning and water. One guy had the power of darkness. He could create literal weapons made out of darkness and throw them at you, which was really cool. And then when you got in close, you could do some melee combat, and from far away you could do these big super moves, and you have your health meter and your psychic force meter, and the lower your health goes, the more psychic energy you have. So the more the energy you have, the more of the big attacks you can pull off. So it's kind of a trade-off. You lose health, you're closer to defeat, but now you can unleash more of these just big, awesome psychic elemental attacks. So it's a series. It's fun in its premise. The characters are really cool. It's awesome that they all have their own different elemental powers. The visuals have always been awesome, especially they always came with these really cool anime intros, with this like really great kind of like heavy metal intro themes and everything. The soundtracks in general are fantastic. I believe they were all done by Zuntata, who was Taito's in-house band at the time. They composed all that great music. So the soundtracks are amazing, the visuals were great, the characters, the gameplay, it was all fantastic. The last game in the series was Psychic Force 2012, and I believe that was released in 1999, and since then there has been nothing Psychic Force related ever released. I think the only thing I can think of is a couple of years later, Psychic Force 2 was reskinned and sold as a game in Japan called X, The Selection of Destiny, I believe is what it's called. So it's a reskinned game. So you could say technically that's another Psychic Force game that was released in like 2002 or something like that. That doesn't really count though. It's just a reskin with a, an anime anime series or whatever. So, but really since 1999, there hasn't been anything new from the Psychic Force series, and I think that's a real shame because those games were unique, they were fun, they were absolutely awesome, and if Taito, if anyone at Taito ever sees this, the unlikely event that anyone cares about my opinion, a new Psychic Force game made on modern hardware where your characters flying through the air with elemental powers, launching these huge, awesome attacks at each other. That could just be absolutely awesome. So there you go. Those are 4 dead fighting franchises I'd love to see come back. Rival Schools, Star Gladiator, Bloody Roar, and Psychic Force. If any of those games ever had another installment, I would be a very, very happy man. But again, let me know down in the comments, what is a dead game series that you would like to see make a comeback, because I'd certainly like to know. Again, big thank you to everyone that joined me for today's videos. All of their channels are going to be linked down in the description below. I highly recommend you go and check them out. Karkamo, Dennis, Jimmy, Jared, Destiny. Go have a look at all their channels and give them a sub from me. Tell them Jim sent you. But until the next community question video, I hope everyone enjoyed. And again, I look forward to hearing from you down in the comments. And until next time, take care, everybody, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.